All right, we are at the final pillar of perception. It's been a good journey, a long journey. Have learned a lot along the way for those that have been reading along, and I greatly appreciate it. I think that reading books is an incredibly healthy thing to do, especially in the world of digital media and social media, and we're making good strides. So let's end on a high note. So the final piece here is called Finding the Opportunity. This might be a little redundant considering we've covered a lot today, but I think there's kind of unique twist to this one to kind of round things out. So one of the hardest yet most valuable things we can do in life is find the opportunities amidst the obstacle and adversity. Complaining and hiding or even surrendering are options, but they are the worst strategy because it leaves us powerless. When obstacles and adversity strike, we need to provide ourselves with an approach. It's one thing to not be overwhelmed by obstacles or discouraged or upset by them. This is something that few are able to do in general. But after you have controlled your emotions and you can see things objectively and stand steady, the next step becomes possible. A mental flip. So you're looking not at the obstacle, but at the opportunity within the obstacle. A quote from Laura Wilder: there is good in everything, if only we look for it. Yet we're so bad at looking. We close our eyes to the gift, which is a little bit of a punch in the face, but a good one. It's our preconceptions that are the problem. They tell us that things should be or need to be a certain way. So when they're not, we assume naturally that we are at a disadvantage or that we'd be wasting our time pursuing an alternate course, when really it's all fair game and every situation is an opportunity for us to act. Let's take a circumstance we've all been in, having a bad boss or a bad manager. All we see is hell. All we see is the thing bearing us down on us. We flinch. But what if you regarded it as an opportunity instead of a disaster? If you mean it when you say you're at the end of the rope and would rather quit, you actually have a unique chance to grow and improve yourself. An opportunity to experience with different solutions, different tactics, or to take on new projects and add to your skill set. You can study this bad manager, bad boss, and learn from him or her while you're filling out a resume to hit up new contacts for a better job. You can prepare yourself for that job by trying new styles of communication, standing up for yourself with all the perfect safety nets around you, quitting and getting out of there. One day the boss will make a mistake, and then you'll move and outmaneuver them. This will feel so much better than the alternative: whining, bad mouthing, and spinelessness. So, what essentially he is referring to here is right when you're at about the end of your mental wits, physical wits, mental wits, is when you really need to flip the script on this obstacle and say, of all the things, this is just pissing me off and driving me into the ground. What is the opportunity? What is the gift in this situation that I could either develop around, that I can learn from, as he mentioned some examples earlier? That way, when you can outmaneuver, when they will make the mistake, you can definitely take advantage of that. Um, let's see here. They are not really. Yes. Okay. Very good. Okay. Sorry about that. Just wanting to make sure I had everything. So, the concept of adversarial growth and post traumatic growth, we're going to be getting into that now. So, sports psychologists recently did a study of elite athletes who were struck with some adversity or a serious injury. Initially, they each reported feeling isolated, emotional disruption, doubt in their athletic ability. Yet afterward, each reported gaining a desire to help others, additional perspective, and realization of their own strength. In other words, every fear and doubt they felt during the energy turned into a greater ability in those exact areas. It's a beautiful idea. Psychologists call it adversarial growth and post-traumatic growth. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. quite literally. The struggle against the obstacle inevitably propels the fighter to a new level of functioning. So this generally comes from when you're facing an obstacle and you do fail and get knocked down. You maybe even once, maybe twice, maybe even 3 times. But in those failures, if you really study them, that's where some of the greatness is. So, to the extent of the struggle determining the extent of the growth, yes. So the larger um, the larger the goal, the larger the obstacle, the larger the task, the more growth you'll have on the backside. An obstacle is an advantage, not an adversity. The enemy is any perception that prevents us from seeing this. Very good. All right, so let me kind of re-summarize that, and then we'll end on a high note here with a case study. So this is both encouraging and also challenging all in one, because of what it's saying is that as we're facing probably your larger scale obstacles, things that maybe were insurmountable in the past, you've tried a lot of different tactics, you can come in with this mental flip at the very end to really understand that this test on you is to expose who you really are and what skills you're deficient in currently. And it'll give you a magnifying glass on what you really need to kind of hone in for that next attempt at the fight, if you will. So I think of like a UFC fighter who went in and fought someone and lost, and they weren't supposed to lose. And then they come back for the comeback fight, and then they just dominate their opponent. And it's because of this exact principle of this post-traumatic growth of, we were going up and we hit a high, we crash into a low, and we failed and we hit an obstacle. And then in that kind of marination period, we could really kind of double the growth of who we are as a person and our tactics and our strategies. And that is really the essence of a fighter and of growth. To actually use a literal fighting example to round out this video. So one of the most intimidating and shocking developments in the modern warfare was the German berserker in World War II. So essentially with this German berserker, they would come all in like the tip of a spear and just basically barge in somewhere and just start fucking things up. Devastating results with little opposition. Just absolutely intensely punching from the Germans. In most cases, the opposing commanders simply surrendered rather than face what felt like an invisible, indefeatable monster bearing down on them. The berserker strategy was designed to exploit the flinch of the enemy. He must collapse at the sight of what appears as an overwhelming force. Its success depends completely on the response. The military strategy works because it is set upon troops to see the offensive force as an enormous obstacle bearing down on them. So, essentially, imagine in this fight or others, they kind of bull rush you. They give you everything they have and they just keep pouring it on, right? They're coming right at you with everything they have. Now, that is truly, in most cases, very overwhelming, right? Now, how the Allied opposition regarded the berserker for most of the war, or that is how they did it, was be overwhelmed, excuse me. They could see only its power and their own vulnerability in it. In the weeks and months after the successful invasion of Normandy by the Allied forces, they faced it again, a set of massive German counteroffenses. How could they stop it? Would it throw them back into the very beaches that they just frickin' fought after? A great leader answered this question. Striding into the conference room was General Dwight D. Eisenhower to make an announcement. He'd have no more of this quivering timidity from his deflated generals. The present situation is to be regarded as an opportunity for us and not a disaster. There will only be cheerful faces at this conference table. So essentially he said, hey, fuck this shit. They're coming at us. They have been coming at us. We gotta make a move right now. In the surging counteroffense, Eisenhower was able to see the tactical solution that had been in front of them the entire time. The Nazi strategy carried its own destruction within itself. Only then were the Allies able to see the opportunity inside the literal obstacle rather than seeing the obstacle as a threat that ended them. Properly seen, as long as the Allies could bend and not break, this attack would send more than 50,000 Germans rushing headfirst into the net, or meat grinder, as they elegantly put it. So essentially, how they would defeat this obstacle and how you could defeat this obstacle if it is a berserker coming at you is you have to try with everything in your wits to bend and not break. Because essentially what he's saying is, as it's all coming in at you, if you're able to be resilient, and then kind of pan out and flank it, all of that big kind of tidal wave coming at you will smash in and of itself. And even though they're coming in one direction and doing that, that smashing will kind of cause a self-destruction on their own army. And so that is a really strong way to end this section, perception. The next section is act, and we will have kind of a precursor to that in prepare to act. But I really appreciate you guys reading along in this section, and let's keep reading.